You're listening to Chicas from China, the podcast where we talk about female travel, finding community, and breaking stereotypes. We're your hosts, Megan Lee and Samantha Shank, and today we're talking about what's in a name. So, Megan recently encountered a situation in Barcelona, and I have grown up in the Midwest, and I've encountered this a lot as an Asian female, but I'm really interested in Megan's point of view since she said she's never experienced this before, growing up primarily in California. So, Megan, what brought you to Barcelona?
Yeah, I am here because I love the city. It's my favorite European city. And I came here to dance bachata and to practice my Spanish.
Muy bien.
So, let's see. So the first couple of days that I was here, I was in a hostel and I was chatting with a Spanish lady in my hostel. She was also a guest. She did not work there. And we were making small talk and she asked me, "What's your name?" I said, "My name's Megan." And she said, "No, what's your real name?" And I said, "My real name is Megan." And she said, "No, no, no. What's your Chinese name?" And I was kind of stunned because nobody's ever asked me that. So I actually told her what it was. And she didn't try to pronounce it. She didn't try to repeat it or memorize it. And we just moved on from the conversation. So it was kind of pointless for me in terms of why she wanted to know and what benefit there was to asking about it. And I had posted this incident on Threads because I was really upset about it. And the idea behind this is that if someone tells you what their name is twice, that's the name that they want you to call them. And that's it, right? If someone tells you their nickname, they want you to call them by their nickname. And
Exactly.
if someone is to keeps pushing for a Chinese name or an ethnic name, the implication, at least to the receiver, is that I give you a false name and that my name that I gave you is not real, but it is real. And for me, my legal name is Megan. It's in English and it's in all my documentation. But this lady did not believe me. She did not think that maybe an Asian person could not possibly have an English name. I don't know. So she kept pushing for the Chinese name, calling it my real name. And so that's the issue that I and many Asian people around the world have because it's really disrespectful to assume something about somebody and then push for personal information that may or may not exist because not all Asian people have an ethnic name to begin with. And even if we did have one, we might not want to be called by this name.
So I have a couple interesting suggestions, comments, thoughts. So starting off with, did you tell her that you were Chinese or did she just ask what your Chinese name was or did she ask what your Asian name was?
She did ask me what ethnicity I was, so I told her that I was Chinese.
Okay. So you have a relatively small Threads following, like 500-ish followers, but this post blew up for you. It has over 1,000 likes, over 700 comments, lots of heated debates in the comments. But I've noticed it's interesting. I've noticed this in other areas where a lot of Asians are coming to support because we've all been through it. And a lot of other communities, specifically white communities or even some Latino communities where their primary worldview has been around other Latinos, they're not seeing it that way just because they've never experienced that. So I feel like, I don't know, growing up in the Midwest, I've seen a lot of people that think that racism does not exist purely because they have never experienced racism. However, if you grew up in rural Indiana, surrounded primarily by white people, and you don't know that many minorities, you're probably not going to experience that much racism personally because A, it doesn't affect you, and B, you're not even seeing it firsthand. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. And to your point, there were so many Asian people that responded to that Threads post, just defending it and calling it racism and things like that. And then a lot of Europeans and I guess, Asian or ethnic people did not see what was wrong with the issue. And it wasn't even that they hadn't experienced it, because yes, that's true. I think they hadn't experienced it themselves. But also, a lot of Spanish people came to defend the lady, which I can understand, but they said that it was not done maliciously and it's part of the culture, and they really just they tried to be respectful because they want to call people by their real names. And
But
so,
if she didn't call you by your like spit Chinese name, I don't really see the point of that. And like you said, your legal name is literally Megan. It's not like this was some name you adopted for like the culture. I get, for example, I've seen a lot of posts from students that are from Africa, from Nigeria or Kenya, and they have very long difficult to pronounce names. And then in America, the United States, they go by a shortened name. So I get that maybe out of curiosity, but I wouldn't ask someone that for the first time meeting them unless I was intending to call them by that name. For
Yeah.
example, if you were a really good friend and I said, hey, I want to get to know about you a little bit more. I mean, I've been your friend for 3 years and I still don't know your Chinese name because it's not what you go by. Even in China, you
Yeah.
were just saying, oh, yeah, with Yao Megan.
Yeah, yeah. All my family calls me Megan, even China. And that's the thing, because people who have really long, complicated names or names that are hard to pronounce typically will introduce themselves with a shorter name because it's
Yeah,
easier. And that is what they prefer to be called if we know that you cannot pronounce it. And it's just because of our lived experience, because it's exhausting to have to continue to correct people on the pronunciation of your name. And especially with
exactly.
Chinese names, if you pronounce the words incorrectly, it could mean something different. It's very common. And so if you butcher my name, I don't want to respond. It feels very
Yeah.
disrespectful to me. So I'm just going to give you a nickname. But in my case, my legal name is Megan, and everybody calls me that. It's frustrating to experience that people are assuming things about you because of the way that you look. That is absolutely 100% racial profiling, despite what people believe. A lot of people believe that it was unintentional, it's not malicious, they want to respect your culture by asking your ethnic name. But if that's what you want to know, then that should be the question asked, right? You should ask, hey, what is your Chinese name? In my case, that's a completely different question. I have no problem answering that question, but it's different from asking what is your real name. The
Exactly.
implication is not the same.
And for me as an adoptee, this is a really touchy subject just because I don't pronounce my Chinese name correctly. Like you said, the tones are really tricky. And then for my sister, she had a more negative experience in her orphanage. So her Chinese name, her real name, is an extremely sore subject with her. She does not like being called that. She does not like being referred to that. I feel like in any case, whether you are Asian or not, it's just rude to assume something about people especially when you're just meeting them. Like, why are you assuming things that you don't know about them? And I feel like this is a very uniquely Asian problem. The question, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Indiana. Where are you really from? I don't know any white person that has ever gotten that, even if they have an accent or something. I don't know. Like, I have several friends that are white and they've just never gotten that. Just where are you really from? It's like, okay, I literally grew up in Indiana. I have no knowledge of China other than visiting it as a tourist, as an adult.
Exactly. So this is the exact same line of question that we get asked. And I get asked a lot in Europe, not as much in the US, but I think it's also because I stick to more diverse cities when I'm in the US.
Yeah.
But a lot of people in Europe will say, where are you really from? And I will always say, I'm from California. But
Because
at the
you are from California. It's not like it's even a lie or a snarky reply. And you have a purely American accent. It's not like you're speaking heavily accented broken English or something.
Exactly. And, people have said that Europeans sometimes cannot differentiate between different accents. Okay, that's fair. But
That's fair.
if I continue respond with where I'm from, that's just accept the answer. If you really want to know my ethnicity, you can ask that as a different question. What is your ethnic background? What is your ethnicity?
Yeah.
And I'll say, hey, I am Chinese. At this point, I know what people are asking, and what I've discovered is usually that locals will want to know where I'm from ethnically. And it happens all around the world, like Latin America and
Yeah.
in Southeast Asia too, because they know that I'm like not Southeast Asian, in Europe for sure. That's a very common question, right? It's similar but different because it ties to your identity. Where are you from is more like where are you from in terms of your identity. And for you and I, we are American, and so we identify ourselves as American and from California or Indiana or wherever, people say that they're from.
It was interesting. I was reading, I don't remember where I saw this. It was on social media somewhere. And this Black woman was talking about, I don't remember where she was. I don't remember if it was Latin America, Africa, wherever. She grew up in New York City or something. She was 100% American. And she was with a German girl who was blonde. And the German girl was white, obviously, blonde, white. And all the children kept asking her, oh, like, you're not from America. And she's like, yes, I am from America. This girl is from Germany. And it was just like interesting to see that people just assume that, oh, because you are X, you must be Y. And I think that's really interesting, even when it comes to Asian identity in Latin America. I have met a Korean man named Jose because he grew up in Argentina. And he fully identifies with Argentinian culture because he didn't grow up with Korean culture. Like he didn't grow up with Korea. He had bits of Korean culture as part of his identity, but in reality, he is fully Argentinian. He spoke Spanish a lot better than he did Korean. Like he's fully Argentinian.
I understand that there's some ethnic situations where you might not expect someone to be from a certain place, but I think the bottom line is that it's disrespectful to ask somebody and pry when it's a first meeting. If
Yeah.
I know you, if we're friends, maybe we've met a couple of times, and I feel more comfortable asking you the background of your name and whatnot, then that's fine. And if you're fine sharing it, then cool. But if I'm just meeting you for the first time, we've only had a 5-minute conversation up until this point, and you keep pushing for information that's personal, and you don't know whether I'm comfortable sharing it or not, that's still disrespectful, and that's still. And when I posted the thread post, so many Spaniards commented saying that they were used to Chinese people in Spain being from mainland China. And they're used to people keeping their Chinese name, but then also having an anglicized, romanized nickname on top of it that's easier to pronounce. And they want to be respectful and use their given name, their birth name, whatever it is, and they want to do their best to pronounce it to respect you, which I completely understand. And there are many of those situations out there. However, again, that's not the case for everybody.
Yeah.
And there is actually a reason why we give ourselves English names. And the background behind that is, like we've talked about, our ethnic names are hard to pronounce. If you butcher it, it doesn't even mean the same thing. And it gets
Exactly.
really exhausting having to correct people every single day of your life on the pronunciation of your name. Literally every Western person that you come into contact with never ever pronounce your name right. It's frustrating. And ultimately, it's just easier for everybody involved to have an easier to pronounce name, right? Like Anna or something, right? This is why Asian people adopt Western names.
Exactly, especially for these interactions that I don't want to say don't mean anything, but that aren't really important for the future. For example, my boyfriend, he is Mexican. He goes by the name David, which is the Spanish pronunciation of David. But when he is at Walmart in Indiana or somewhere else or even abroad, he'll just say his name is David because it's 10 times easier than David. They're confused about it, and it's just confusing for everybody. I have another friend. His name is a little bit more unique. So again, he just goes by a nickname when he's ordering or if he's talking to someone that he's probably not going to see ever again. Just because, again, it's just significantly easier. My own mother does that, and she is white and has a very unique name. It's just easier for everyone. And especially, like, I don't even think it's about ease of everyone. It's about what people give you and what their preference is in that moment. And I think
Right.
it's just about respecting that and excusing my language, but just don't be an ass about it. I think at the end of the day, that's just really important, especially when you are meeting a stranger.
Yeah. And it applies to everybody. Like you said, like it could be someone who has an English name and they just prefer to be called an English nickname. So my name is whatever I want you to call me, period. That's it.
I had gotten this once in LA. I was at bachata class and a guy asked me my name and I said, "Oh, my name is Samantha." And he told me, "Oh, I assumed your name was Mei Ling or something." I was completely taken aback at this. I was not expecting this from somewhere in LA. And I did what I normally do was I'm very loud and vocal and I tapped my friend and I'm like, "Oh my God." I sang this very loudly in front of this guy and I said, "This guy just called me Mei Ling." Told me I look like a Mei, and I said, "Oh, I bet his name is John or something." And I said this very loud and vocally in front of him, and he was embarrassed about it. That's how I approach things. Is I talk about them behind their back very loudly in a way that they can hear me. But I was just so shocked and taken aback by that. And I know my sister, who is primarily in Wisconsin and Minnesota, which are extremely white areas, she's gotten that a lot more than I have, especially because she deals with older people at work, and the comments she's gotten from older people are very interesting.
I can see how that can happen in the Midwest. And it's just, I think it's more about educating people and making sure that people are aware that these are experiences and that dismissing them and feeling
Yeah.
like they're invalid is incredibly disrespectful. And that's what a lot of people do. And a lot of people who have never had this experience, who do not have ethnic names or could be considered mistaken for another ethnicity, they've never experienced it, but doesn't mean that doesn't happen and doesn't mean it's not
Yeah.
real. And that's the important thing here.
I think that's a lesson we can learn from everyone. I have one of my favorite TED Talks is about stereotypes. This lady was talking about how everyone is prone to stereotyping other people, everyone is guilty of it. And it's just a matter of respecting other people's worldviews and lived experiences and realizing that just because you have never experienced something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And it doesn't mean other people don't take it the wrong way. And I think that's something we can all learn from.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people argue about the intention behind something and how some of these comments are not made with malicious intention. They're not trying to be rude. They're not trying to be racist. It doesn't matter what the intention is, ultimately. The person being affected feels disrespected, and that's what their reality is. And it's important to acknowledge that, right? You can be unintentionally disrespectful to somebody. And if you acknowledge that and you apologize and say, hey, okay, I realized that maybe I did not intend to be rude towards you, but it was. And if I have disrespected you in any way, apologize for that. That's acknowledging the fact that their experience is real and not something made up, and not something that like you have to defend for yourself, saying like, oh, I didn't do anything wrong because I didn't mean to be disrespectful. What does it mean like that you
You weren't.
wasn't? Like it doesn't matter like what your intentions were at all.
This wraps up today's episode of Chicas from China. Thank you so much for tuning in. Follow us on social media at Chicas from China and find our show notes at chicasfromchina.com. You can join this discussion on Instagram. We'd love to hear more about your thoughts.